Hello, this is Father David on day 4 of the Nativity fast. The meditation today from our document is from St. John Chrysostom, one of his homilies on the Gospel of Matthew. He says, with regard to human nature, "Did God make all men? It is surely plain to every man. How then are not all equal with respect to virtue and vice? Whence are the good and gentle and meek? Whence are the worthless and evil? For if these things do not require any purpose, but are of nature, how are they made different from one another? For if by nature all were bad, it would not be possible for anyone to be good. But if good by nature, then no one would be bad. But if we should say that by nature the one is good, the other bad, which would not be reasonable, these things must be unchangeable, for the things of nature are unchangeable. No, listen. All mortals are also liable to suffering, and no one is free from suffering, even though he should strive without end. But why did he make worthless men at all, when he might have made all men good?" What a common question since the very beginning. He says, whence then are the evil things? Why, when he might have made all men good, where do the evil things come from? He says, ask yourself, for it is my part to show that they are not of nature, nor from God, but from willing and not willing. It is from ourselves. For evil is nothing else than disobedience to God. This is a very common refrain that, if God is so good, then why is there all of this pain and anguish? And it's a legitimate question that needs to be acknowledged. St. John is telling us here that he's not so sure that it's God who is the one to blame in every case, in every scenario. That man who freely chooses also sows chaos into the world. But let's take a closer look, because I said freely chose, and indeed we have free will. But not everyone is coming to Christ. Not everyone is coming to their choices that they have in front of them with the same cards in their hand. We've all been dealt something different. And Father Alexander Schmemann would often say, according to Father Tom Hopko, that a bunch of the spiritual life is just how to deal with what you've been dealt. There is a sense in which we take this particular passage from St. John and we hear the gospel reading for today, where Christ is saying that it is inevitable that offenses against the law should come, but woe to him through whom they come. And then he says, take heed to yourselves and forgive your neighbor. Why? Partly because taking heed to yourself is the only thing you can control. Yours is to forgive your neighbor. Even if he comes to you 7 times in a day saying, forgive me, Christ says you are to forgive him. Why? Because there is some of the bad that St. John Chrysostom speaks to us today within them, and some also with you. But you are not able to control the bad that is in your neighbor. You're only able to take heed to yourself. Frustrating because sometimes we can't even feel like we can control our own selves. It's that struggle to exhibit self-control. But this is where Christ tells us, take care of the log, the plank that is in your own eye. And then you will see clearly to take the speck out of your brother's eye. That's the amount of insight we have into each respective heart. In terms of our own, we have a plank's worth of insight, nature, nurture, my background, past trauma, different passions that I may have inherited or may have indulged and allowed to grow within me. All of this is happening to me, and I can address this with God's help. But I am called to be merciful to my neighbor, because we are, as St. John says, all coming from different positions, all coming from different spiritual starting points. And many of us have a lot of work to do. There's been a lot of damage and trauma as we approach the church. Others of us, perhaps we haven't had to struggle with particular crosses all of that time. And our transitioning into the church, if we're coming in, if we're converting later, or we're rediscovering our faith, or we're seriously engaging the faith we've had our whole lives for the first time, you may be realizing you have some junk, some sin, some passions to deal with that maybe somebody else doesn't, or vice versa. And now it's time in the midst of this fast, take heed to yourself and be merciful to your neighbor. So God bless you. Lord willing, we'll see you tomorrow.